Hello, and we're live. Hello, and welcome, welcome, welcome. So we have today, of course, Tom. Everybody remembers Tom. And then we have Stephanie Whitson. Wrong way there, this way. Hello. Tom. And then we have Stephanie Whitson. Wrong way there, this way. Hello. I don't know my rights and lefts, even in real life, so believe me, the camera thing, this is like... But anyway.
Just guess.
Somewhere around me, there's another person.
There's Stephanie. Follow one of these fingers, and you will find her. Anyway, Stephanie, surprise, join us to promote her book. We're on her book tour today. So exciting!
Woohoo!
As well
Yes.
as, we're going to talk about movies because it's what we do. Right now, it's
right? I originally came to talk about movies, but if you, I can talk about my book too. It's fine.
We definitely want to talk about your book.
Oh, we don't want to pressure you about this. We don't want to.
Oh, we don't. Okay. Is peer pressure out of vogue again? Darn it.
All right. So my name's Stephanie. I have a book. It came out today. You can get it on Amazon or any ebook vendor. It looks kind of like this, except it has a different cover now.
I really wasn't planning on doing Nano this year, and then Charlie inspired me to start watching the old TV show, the old soap opera Dante's Cove. And the first season is on Hulu, so I just jumped in. And that soap opera is so trashy and has so much gratuitous nudity that I found it very inspiring. And now I am outlining a fun little rom-com for Nano. So, hey, you never know where October will take. Let's see. Oh, Kat, thank you, sweetheart. Kat's got the link. Yay.
Oh!
Did you hear Kat's got your link?
I saw that. I can stop looking at my tiny phone.
Yay! Seriously, it's like truly who wants a wrench? Because I got too much going on. I mean, y'all should have seen me just a little while ago and going, why can I find nothing here? Oh, that's right, because I have ADHD.
So I'm actually going to switch over to my computer real quick, so I'll be right back.
Yes,
okay? All right.
So Kat says, woo, Nano. Yes, Nano. So it turns out, because I always like to kind of participate in Nano, but the live streams, since there's more of them, and people are more talking about writing, and it's a very inspiring kind of community event. So I always sort of participate in Nano in an adjacent sort of way, like in a general writing sense, rather than, because I find sometimes that goals this specific word count type goal or deadlines tend to be a bit of a creativity killer for me. I get too into it. I'm too much focused on it, and then anytime I fall behind in my goal, I then really am so good at beating myself up for it. So again, that's probably actually what's the creativity killer. Just say, Stephanie's back. So, but this time I don't feel that pressure since it's Dante's Cove. It's absolutely trashy writing. I mean, it's so delightfully, no pressure to live up to standards. Dante's Cove does not have standards. Pretty much.
None at all.
If you're 7 years old, you can write better dialogue than Dante's Cove. It's wonderful. For real. Because I've taught 6-year-olds, and I'm here to tell you, it's pretty much on par with 6-year-olds' dialogue when they write stories. And so, hey, we all can feel good and no pressure with it. Although, fair warning, there's a lot of nudity. It's not necessarily for anyone younger than, is that what nudity looks like?
Yes.
Just in case for people to know. Working on outlining, using K.M. Weiland's outlining your novel and your the workbook, which the workbook is actually more helpful than a lot of people's workbooks. I have to say.
Yeah, if you want to write a story, you just follow this one book and you go chapter by chapter. You will finish a story by the end.
Yeah, I mean the book is definitely this way. And she really, reading this whole book, pretty much converted me to the gospel of outlining. I will say that. But then, like when I found out the workbook had come out, this was a few years later. I really bought it just to sort of support her because I was so grateful for the book. But I have been heavily surprised. If anything, I might say that the workbook is actually more useful, at least in my beginning outlining process, than the book is for the first couple chapters. So that's pretty awesome. It's a really nice bonus.
Who is that
also,
one by?
K.M. Weiland.
K.M. Weiland.
Okay.
And if you actually search for that on Google, you can go directly to her website for this, and you can buy the ebook directly from her. And she also then gives you a bunch of bonus books, like outlining your character.
Character arc develop. It's really cool.
And they're all free ebooks that come with, and the ebook itself, I think, is like $4. Like, she really just wants people to get this book one way or another.
So it's not sponsored or anything, just really impressed with her stuff. And also her generosity as a writer trying to help fellow writers with, if you go to her website to order it, instead of, to get the ebook, instead of going to like Amazon or Nook or whatever, she gives you a whole bunch of free bonus ones.
And it's not DRM, so you can use it on any e-reader.
Okay.
I actually like now using it. I used it with Google Play Books, which you can upload an EPUB to, and then it'll read it to you. And they actually have their high quality one is actually a very natural sounding voice now. It's not robotic. It's not as off-putting. So it's a nice. If you can't get an audiobook, you can turn it into an audiobook pretty cheap and easily.
Right. Yeah, the Google Play
books.
Audio reader, the audio voice I was surprised how good it is. It has really improved.
Liner normally story?
In theory. In reality, no.
I love it.
So in theory, yes, and I have outlined several books or several story ideas.
And even done treatments for them.
And I've even done treatments for them. But most of them, by the time I finish outlining them, I am not that into the story. And I don't think that's the outlining fault. I think it had to do with the story wasn't compelling enough, because that was actually the reason I didn't continue writing it. Was, look, if I am not that into it anymore, probably readers won't be. I mean, maybe mildly, but, I wanted to, for my first real set of solid fiction books, I wanted them to at least be ones that I'm super excited about. All right, I admit it. I'm selfish. I want to write for me. And I want to be really into it.
And again, that's what we really like about K.M. Weiland's stuff is the first steps are essentially, how do you make this something really enticing and interesting?
She really does coach through that.
If it's not interesting and you don't want to read it, why would anyone else? So let's first get this part down.
Exactly. As I said, she converted me to the gospel of outlining, because before I was like, oh, it's such a chore. And now I'm like, yeah, let me see if any of these stories are, strong enough to fly on their own, so to speak. Did I spy a cat? I'm just saying, show us your pets. Hello. Oh, with the little socks. Oh, a little mackerel tabby.
Look at her paws.
She's such
I love the socks on the paws.
Oh, so adorable. And so understanding of the
Yes, this is what must be done for the food to come.
Right.
I feel like I'm a real writer now since I have a cat.
See?
Yeah, people write, but I think the majority of the writers I follow on Instagram or YouTube, they have a cat or a dog.
Right.
One or two.
I didn't have a cat. Tom's passed away a couple years ago, and I was actually making a comment to Tom. This is more than a year ago now. It seems I feel like, especially with whose book I was reading, Rita Mae Brown's book on writing, which also is actually quite good. That she was talking about, her cats, and how there is a joke about, can you be a proper writer without a cat judging you while you write, so on. And I said to Tom, I was like, I don't know if I really feel like a real writer. I don't have any cats. And it was literally a week later, some kittens were born under an azalea bush at the front of the apartment. And we have been adopted by all the ones that we could not find homes for. Because we found homes for several of them. They were really sweet and gorgeous.
It was more of, we found homes for all of them.
On my YouTube, by the way, if you want to see, there is like 2 kitten videos. Just saying.
Yeah, we found homes for all of them. 2 of them just refused to leave.
Get in the car. They would not stay in the car.
Like, to say they throw a fit would be an understatement.
So those are the 2 that have stuck around, and those are my writing cats. They literally hang around my bedroom windows, and they keep all the mice away from my yarn. And yeah, we feed them all the smoked meats that we have. Because Tom has a smoker out there by the window.
Ooh,
but let's
that sounds
see.
good.
Yeah, Tom's really good at smoking stuff. Oh, it smells so good. So the movies we watched, I literally had to make a list because we watched several. But do we have to talk all about them? No, we don't. We can talk about whatever we want. I don't know. Stephanie, have you happened to ever watch any kind of Asian movie?
Like, what do you mean? Like would a movie be an Asian movie if it just had an Asian actor in it, or
well, more
like what do you classify?
It needs to be dealing with some kind of Asian culture,
right? Preferably, with Asian director or at least Asian writer or something like that. Like there's like plenty of, it can be for a Western audience, such as a bunch of Ang Lee's movies are specifically targeted at Western audiences. However, at their heart, they're really about Asian family culture.
Yeah.
Or at least many of them are.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I watch a lot of movies, so
yeah. Absolutely. And like, look, there were some movies that Tom recommended that I'm like, I don't remember watching that. And he's like, you literally were the one who showed this to me. And so it wasn't until I rewatched, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I have seen this. I remember this now. So the ones that we did watch, just to like kind of recap for everybody. And again, nobody has to have seen these movies for everybody to contribute, because we're really just talking about storytelling. And a lot of elements in any kind of cultural storytelling are frankly rather universal, or at least some of them are universal, because family is family. Everybody's got family members that, they love with all their heart, and other family members that, maybe they duck out sometimes. Just say, it happens. So the ones that we were watching this week were Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. That's an Ang Lee film. And The Wedding Banquet. Also, it's part of what is sort of unofficially called Ang Lee's Father Knows Best trilogy. Have not seen the first one in the trilogy, Pushing Hands, but it sounds interesting. Hero. Have you seen that one? Jet Li. It was kind of a big film. I love the film. That's the one. My favorite part of it is actually there's a recurring scene with cherry blossom orchard, and the colors of the cherry blossoms change depending on who is the narrator of the story and their feelings about that part of the story. So it's kind of essentially it's the same story told from several different people's perspectives, since it is a love triangle. And let's see, The Forbidden Kingdom. Okay, Jet Li and Jackie Chan. It's a delightful movie with some interesting B-movie stuff. I don't really know why I didn't have that.
So I think I watched Hero. Might have been a few years ago.
Yeah, most people
Yeah.
familiar.
Right, the cover at least is familiar to most people. Big Trouble in Little China is actually the movie that got us as children into Asian cinema.
Oh yeah, I've watched that one a lot.
It's like we were like, look, even if like you've never seen any of them, most people have at least heard of Big Trouble in Little China, because it's a delightful trashy movie. It's silly. It's truly fantastical. It's fun. So let's see what else. There's also Saving Face and Dim Sum Funeral, as well as Kung Fu Hustle. And again, several people have...
And they're all on Amazon Prime. All those 3 are on Amazon Prime.
So if you have Prime, or you have access to somebody's Prime account, it is definitely worth at least checking out the trailers, maybe watching it. I mean, not all of these are comedies, not all of these are dramas, not all of these are action movies. They're all, it's really a kind of a mix, because we wanted to specifically talk about there is a little bit of a difference in Asian culture storytelling that we don't see as much in Western storytelling, but we think there's some valid points here that anyone can incorporate. Also, hey, these are just good movies we're just going to recommend. Just going to go ahead.
Yeah, that was the other requirement for us to have these movies is we're not looking for movies that win awards. We're looking for movies that you watch again and again. Hence, Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh my gosh, how many times
you can watch again and again. It's still fun.
Right? Yeah.
So when I first saw Big Trouble in Little China, I think it was like 1990 or 91. Because I remember we rented the movies, and I think it was like for like maybe his birthday party / sleepover or something with some of the boys, and they rented Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Big Trouble in Little China. And so to me, in my mind, they always like, okay, here's the truth. Okay, so back to headcanon story. So in my, middle school mind, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles takes place in the sewers, and as a middle schooler, I thought, therefore, Big Trouble in Little China takes place above those same sewers, since sewers play a role in both stories, and it does involve a certain amount of, Asian or Chinese or Japanese, I don't know, like it gets confusing, but there's a certain level of mysticism. Okay.
Look, we were kids. We just knew they were Asian. There was a lot of, fighting with martial arts.
Right.
It was not guns.
It wasn't guns.
Except for Jack Burton or whatever.
Right. But there was like, there's wise old men to teach martial arts as well as philosophy, or a wise old rat picked with poison. So I thought these movies were related. And in fact, when Mortal Kombat came out, since there's a character who also can create storms, electrical storms, I thought it was related to Big Trouble in Little China, like it was like a crossover thing.
Which, behind the scenes, that the Raiden character was directly inspired by Big Trouble in Little China's character.
I wondered, because I was like,
yeah,
are they really? I have actually wondered off and on for decades.
Yeah, Ed Boon is a big fan of the movie. Okay. And so that's why he showed up.
Because, this guy's got this really weird kind of open weave straw hat, and he makes electrical storms. And it can transform, he can, not teleport, but, he can lift up and down through holes. And they both, I think, could do that to varying degrees, both from the from Little China and from the original Mortal Kombat game that came out in '92. I did look at that last night. So I thought it was related, and of course, since we love Big Trouble in Little China, I was happy to be involved or play a video game that was, in my mind, a crossover of that, because I always kind of sad they never had another Big Trouble in Little China movie, at least direct. So it is the movie that when people are like, well, I'm interested in Asian cinema, you've made a compelling point. What should I start with? And I'm always like, Big Trouble in Little China. It's just a fun movie you can watch with kids.
It's true that, speaking of, love letters to Asian cinema. Yes. It is admittedly written and directed by John Carpenter. But it's, John Carpenter got the studios to pay for all of his favorite Chinese, Hong Kong actors and fight choreographers to come over. Because now that there's YouTube, every time anyone talks about, well-known fight choreography, eventually it will be mentioned Big Trouble in Little China, because, they actually made a film appearance in the movie. Because John Carpenter's just like, no, I want everyone to see who you are.
It is true. It is very true. Right. So, Stephanie, I'm just going to go ahead and say,
yes.
Please feel free at any time to say,
yes.
Please feel free at any time to jump in and interrupt us, because that's how we are. And we know that. I just want to make sure you understand, like, no, interrupt. Just jump in there and just get in there with your shoulders like, this is my space at Loeman's. It's a sale. All right. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure it was abundantly clear.
What's Loeman's?
Loeman's, I don't know if Loeman's still exists, but it was a joke back in the day in the 80s and 90s. Like, Loeman's had a famous basement sale.
Okay.
As well as, I can't remember, there were some other stores. But they would have these like 70 to 90% off all of last year's clothing.
Including wedding dresses.
Including wedding dresses. And like, we're not talking about like simple, cheap wedding dresses. We're talking like $1,000 upon $1,000. So imagine getting 90% off of a $5,000 wedding dress in 1980s money. Like, that's worth getting in there with your friends and having them help you find these clothes and, you know, getting through the throng of people. So that was like sort of the thing. It was like, Mom used to joke when I was young.
Oh, and there's no changing rooms.
There's no changing rooms. So you're either changing in public, like in the, like where everyone and God can see you, or you're just like, good enough. And you just like... So that was like, there was this joke, because it was like, imagine gridiron football, only you've put all the teams of the NFL in one stadium, and now you need to get from one end to the other. And that was how thick it was on the sales floor. So yes, it was like an all-day event if you went. It was people. Herman Baumbeck wrote about it a couple times, and that's how my mom talked about it. And beta males.
Well, it's just, I mean, the author who wrote the book within 3 years went, oh, I totally misunderstood what was going on in this situation. Here's the corrected, you know,
wolves do
info
not
on
have
wolves.
alpha and beta males. That's not a thing in actual wolf pack culture. The Gods, the Two Worlds on Hulu. I don't know. Did we talk about those?
We haven't. I've mentioned it to you before, but we didn't talk about it this week. It's a Korean movie that takes place in the afterlife, as they essentially try to get this soul reincarnated and show they're worthy, but they have to go through all these trials, and you get these death gods that go with you to help you along the way. Yeah. It's a surprisingly interesting and fun one. There's also a sequel, but I was trying to include also a few other movies that we may not talk about on the show, but are also ones I definitely recommend for just, they're entertaining and they're a different type of storytelling. They're not American storytelling.
Exactly.
And I was telling her, after I looked up the main actress in Saving Face, I was looking at her, all her roles, and it had the names of the characters she played in each of these roles. And after looking through that list, I'm just like, I'm looking back at Gloria and just like, stop worrying so much about the names for your characters.
Yeah.
Compared to Hollywood, you are so creative and also not racist in your naming of people.
Well, he's trying not to be. One of the side characters inadvertently ended up with the initials BLM. I'm sticking with it. I don't care. I'm like, I like it. Yes, let there be subtext here. I don't care.
Years ago, when it came out, it's a Korean movie, which automatically tells you it's going to be a weird movie. They are the best at weird horror.
So you have not added it?
No. It's called Save the Green Planet.
Oh yes, you've been trying to get me to watch this. I know it comes.
And I was just reading through the synopsis of it.
Right.
And the best way I can summarize this is, at the time it came out, no one had the interest they have now in serial killers.
Sure.
But I want you to imagine someone attempting to make an original serial killer horror movie comedy. Yes.
You know what? It already sounds like a train wreck, and I'm here for that. So I guess I'm going to catch up on that. And okay.
And he is truly delusional, and he thinks the leaders of businesses and politicians are reptilian aliens, and so he is literally filming and torturing them to confess. Now, try to figure out where the comedy comes in.
I don't even know.
Yeah, it is such a train wreck. It's an experience.
It does sound like a train wreck. Okay, so while we and what I was doing was I couldn't think of much more I was working on the what is unexpected section of the workbook.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm apparently not really good at figuring out what is unexpected in a rom-com. Okay, other than that everybody's terrible. It's unexpected that like the female lead will be a terrible person. Frankly, it's unexpected that she'll end up with the bad love interest.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I moved on. So, because like I essentially just tabled it. I moved on to the 2-sentence premise. So that's what I am working on now, is figuring out my 2-sentence premise. I'm deep in that. Really cleaned anymore, so. And now a need for dry socks. Let me tell you. It turns out I have a weakness, and it's called wet socks. Like, everything else in me can be sopping wet, but if my socks are wet, that's it. I am freaking done. I am done with the world.
Your will to live really drops fast.
What is that about? I don't know. But,
I don't like it.
What?
I don't like it when my feet get cold. Once my feet are cold, I'm done. I don't want to do anything else.
I mean, I can, like, soldier through if my feet get cold. I don't like it. But I can soldier through, but when I have sopping wet socks, I'm like, this is it. The world can burn for all I care. And I just slop away. I just done. Charlie says the audio came out good, so we should have an episode 1 up by Thursday, because Tom and Charlie have a little podcast baby they've been working on. And I only overheard what they were talking about from the other down the hall. But it sounded good what I heard. Tom did post a link for Save the Green Planet if anyone else is interested in what sounds like a rolling trash fire of a movie. Of course,
but apparently classy. It's a classy trash fire. It's part of the Criterion collection.
It was like, please, yes. So, hey. Okay. All right. So, let's actually get back for a minute and continue to talk about. We've talked about Big Trouble in Little China, and frankly, slightly to a lesser degree, we have mentioned Forbidden Kingdom. No, Forbidden Kingdom.
Yes, the Forbidden Kingdom.
As well as Hero. Have talked about, like, seriously, if you are a bit of a poetic romantic at heart, you're going to love Hero, okay? At least you're probably going to love Hero. Visually...
It is just visually gorgeous. Like, if you just...
You need to have the sound on to appreciate this movie. It is so beautiful. And also there's... Oh, the thing with the candles to tell you when the the warlord, the kingdom, whatever, he's under threat. Oh, that's really fascinating, because it's sort of like a Sherazade type. I will tell you a story, and you can try to figure out who is safe and who isn't in this story. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Ang Lee.
As I say, should we talk about Ang Lee? And now that we've watched actually several other movies, not just Ang Lee, the Taiwanese beat sheet.
There should be, which, Tom, I'm really hoping you will make it, since I could not find it online. Nobody has a Taiwanese storytelling beat sheet, but there is, why is it in the third act there needs to be, a rush to the hospital?
And in the first act, in the middle to the end of the first act, someone gets pregnant. They're really following they really follow this Confucius idea of keeping everything equal. So we have the beginning of life at the beginning of the story, and we have life ending at the end of the story in all of these stories.
But it's nice because it's kind of predictable, so I know what's happening, so I know what to expect. It's nice. I mean, a lot of these Ang Lee stories, it's specifically Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and The Wedding Banquet, for instance. But also there are others, Saving Face followed a very similar beat of, it's sort of the Confucius family style of, let's say, domestic politics, in conflict with, the younger generation trying to live a more modern lifestyle with more modern ideals, maybe a bit more individualistic, and whether that has to do with coming out to one's family that they're, let's say, at least queer in some way. Because, Saving Face is about two of the characters are at least in a lesbian type relationship. I don't know that they're both actually lesbian. I don't remember if they actually say that, but one of them does say she's a lesbian.
Yeah.
And versus in the Wedding Banquet, spoiler, there's some gorgeous gay flesh. Enjoy.
Although even in the what do you call it?
It's freaking fantastic.
In the description, though, even for the Wedding Banquet, it actually says one of the characters is bi.
Well, yeah, the Tiwanese son, he's bisexual, but his boyfriend / husband, however you want to it was the 90s, so our interpretation would change a little bit now.
Yeah.
If they've been living together for so many years, they're at least common law husbands to us.
They're together at least 8 years or 10 to 12 years. They've been together a long time.
But nevertheless, because the other one, the non-Taiwanese guy, I think he does. I want to say he says gay rather than bisexual.
Yeah, he says he's gay.
So, and you can have, two men in a relationship and one's bisexual and one's gay. And of course, this complexity, they're just like, you know what, we're just not, it's the early 90s, we're not going to go do that too much. But, nevertheless, it's really about younger people trying to live a more modern lifestyle and but budding up, loving their older family who is still following a more Confucius lifestyle or domestic situation, and that sort of how do people find that happy middle ground so they can all continue to talk to each other and have meals and love each other.
Because the characters do all love each other.
Oh, they do, and what I love about these is everybody loves each other, even when they obviously have some major blind spots.
Although I have to say, what was it? Was it the Wedding Banquet? I think where I was joking about. The Wedding Banquet shows how you can write a story where all the characters but one are very functional people. Yes. They are all lovely people. I would love to know all of these characters, but for one single character that just throws so much drama and wrenches into this because they don't want to face reality.
And that's essentially what happens in the Wedding Banquet. It's the Taiwanese son who's a yuppie type character.
Oh, yes.
And he doesn't want to be honest. He doesn't want to try to forge a way to be honest about who he is with his parents. And therefore, conflict. So much conflict. See, but that's really interesting from a writer's perspective, is to show this is how you can portray that, where you do not have to have bad, evil family members who are ugly to everybody. They can be loving and there still be conflict. Because I feel like sometimes Western storytelling forgets, let's stop making everybody good and evil. It can just be misunderstandings or just a conflict in perspective, but love can help find a bridge.
One of the things, and it's a little bit of a spoiler, but you'll have to figure it out how it actually works out.
Right.
For, what is this, a 25, 27-year-old story, is that the Taiwanese parents both actually...
You are really ruining this story. I cannot believe you're going to ruin it.
But they both separately eventually figure out about their son.
Right. Because they love him. They actually are trying to see him for who he is.
And for the sake of the other spouse, they both tell everyone... that they're fine with it, they will work with this, but don't tell the other spouse. And so they just...
Which is kind of interesting because we actually saw that among our mother and her husband, our stepfather, of they both were don't tell the other. And when the mom died, a couple years later, we started talking and why do they keep this information from each other when they both were on board with this, but they had these ideas about each other?
Yes.
But it was out of love, so, it still worked out okay.
Yeah, it's not any kind of malice or anything. It is out of love that they're but please still protect the other one. Right. I know I'm fine. I don't know if the other one would be okay with it.
Right, and we don't want disharmony because a family needs a certain level of harmony to function at meals, at holidays, at births and deaths. The usual. And, and that's, I think, one of the things, like, after Big Trouble in Little China, which really showed, like, Asian storytelling can be super fun and fantastic, and you can have monsters and, you know, demigods practically. You can have fun stuff. Then, like, literally, like, I don't know, a year or two after I originally saw Big Trouble in Little China and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mortal Kombat, the game, I then saw the Ang Lee movies. At first, I think the first one I actually saw, I don't actually remember which one I first saw, was either Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and then The Wedding Banquet. It was like,
yeah, I'm pretty sure we saw Eat, Drink, Man, Woman first, because,
right.
I mean, we had a love of food movies.
Oh, there's so much food preparation in Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. If you love food, this is the movie to watch.
There is so much food porn in this movie.
Oh, it's delightful.
Gratuitous close-up shots of food.
So good. I want to eat every last bit of it. I want to eat through the whole movie. It's wonderful. But yeah, like, I think I saw both movies, though, in the same year. So probably, like, 94, when I was still, like, I was a very young, barely a teenager, if even a teenager. And it was so refreshing to see, here is a way to have conflict in a story about family where everyone still loves each other. Because so many times it seems like Western stories, if they have a family drama, it's like you really do question, well, does so-and-so even love everybody else? Why are they such a jerk? You know, versus that is not how Asian storytelling is, at least about family dramas. It is, like, often, or most of the time, it's very clear everybody loves each other, but they are trying to figure that middle ground so that they can have something like harmony. And I could relate to that because, oh yeah, you better believe, how many times did my mother try to explain to me that liking kissing girls was just a phase? That everybody feels that way about their best friends. It's okay. I can't tell you how many times my mother told me that, about a decade of this. And I'm like, Mom, I don't think it's a phase. It's been a decade.
What was that line you were talking about? Two people is a phase, 2 years?
2 times. 2 times is a phase. 2 years is a lifestyle. You've now committed to this lifestyle. I mean, almost every sleepover I ever had involved kissing in closets. So, for practice. And there was my mother who kept telling me, like, oh, honey, it's just a phase. You'll grow out of it. Don't worry. You're normal. Everyone feels that way about their best friends. Really? Mom, maybe there's some things we need to talk about. Yeah.
She did not take the follow-up years later, when she had not been doing as well,
Yeah,
about your comment about all of her friends.
Oh, well, I was being kind of catty. I was in my early 20s, in fairness, and I was being kind of catty to my mother because I'm sure everybody understands. It gets frustrating when you're trying to tell your parents who you really are, and they keep saying, no, I know the definition of you, and it is not this. And you're like, I swear to you, this really is me. And they're like, no, I know you better than that. And it's like, and so I was being catty, and I said, because she said, you grow out of it. I don't feel that way about my friends anymore. And I said, well, I've seen your friends, and they're ugly old cows, so I can understand why you don't feel like kissing them. And
That's so
slapped me on the arm so bad it left a mark. But honestly, I said, I knew I had that coming. I mean, I was being catty.
Versus, her friends before, like...
Yeah, when I was a child, I used to love sitting on the floor while Mom would chat with her friends. A friend would come over for a visit, and I'd sit on the floor and I'd just admire their beautiful shoes. How pretty their ankles were. And, yeah, that was not true of my mother's friends in her late 50s or 60s. Sorry, but I know they're not watching. So, anyway. Let's see. Yes, Charlie was... She was a lesbian. How do parents not know? I know for real. How do they not know? Yes, loving denial. That's apparently how they... Because parents sometimes, insist on their definition of people, their child, their offspring. It's like there's not quite that disconnect. Like as if the umbilical cord is still attached or something. When they are their own unique people.
I mean, we sometimes tell the story of the year of the My Buddy doll.
Oh, the battle that went on in our family. And it eventually became a gender war in some weird sort of way, except Tom wasn't involved in it.
Wait, what was wrong with the Buddy doll?
Oh, Daddy. Okay.
So, do you remember the commercials and stuff for the My Buddy doll, along with Kid's sister?
My buddy, wherever you go, I'm gonna go, my buddy. Oh,
You know, it was essentially a Cabbage Patch doll that, you know, acted as a pseudo friend for you to go do activities with.
Okay, yeah. But what was wrong with that?
And
So,
I had a Cabbage Patch doll.
so I was a sensitive child growing up. I did not have enough markers of masculinity in my father's mind.
He wasn't butch as a child. He's very butch now, but he was not butch back then.
And so
Very sweet boy.
my father really had this fear, an honest to goodness fear, that me having a doll would actually be sort of the straw that broke the camel's back and make me gay.
Emasculating him into.
Oh my god!
Apparently.
So my
Like, it's so weird. Like, caring for a little doll
So
would make
so
him
what it became was this year-long argument between him
in our family.
and the women in his family.
We're like, dolls do not make you, love men, because not all women who love dolls and children love men.
And it was not just my sister and my mother, it was also his mother who get on this.
Buy the My Buddy doll for Tom so that it wasn't even a financial issue. I was like, absolutely not, I will burn this doll. It was insane. The homophobia, the fear. Because, let's be honest, Dad was at the very least bisexual.
Yes.
But he was trying so hard to, conform to society. There are people who internalize the homophobia so much, and this was definitely one of those cases.
Oh, I got a lot of it from him.
Yeah.
So, when my kids were really small, I was going to school on campus, and then their dad, who I'm not married to anymore, was like, "Oh, how was school day?" And so I was telling him about this class. I think it was like a human sexuality class, and I said, "Oh, there was a study we learned that said that more birth defects and more birth defects are present in boys than girls when they're born, because to go from a blank slate to a boy, more changes have to happen in the body than a girl." He's like, okay. And so I'm like explaining some more. And I said, and it's also weirdly, oddly, strangely coincidental that more boys than girls later on end up being like gay or lesbian or bisexual or whatnot. And he's like, are you saying my boy, because I was pregnant with my boy at the time, he's like, are you saying my boy's gonna be gay? I'm like, oh my god, no. And then
how did we get from A to Z here?
Yeah. Where was that connection?
I don't know. And then so Jackson,
with one exception. There is one exception. I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. So I ended up watching this like 2.5 hour video lecture by a doctor on how to address trans patients. And how to, and he's ended up having, like, in 4 months he's taken on 1,500 patients because so few doctors will handle trans patients. And he was saying, like, the anecdotal evidence of stuff he's come across. One of them was, if you had a male child and were given, I can't remember the name of the drug, but it was for morning sickness. Not morning sickness.
No,
sorry.
to retain the baby,
to retain the baby.
Of having a spontaneous miscarriage, they gave him this drug.
It was a form essentially of super estrogen. He's like, just about everyone who got exposed to that, if there was a boy, they're at least bi, if not just straight gay. Like, those
By the way, Tom did post a link to that in Charlie's Discord.
Okay.
So, but it is like a 2-hour-long video. I mean, you don't have to watch all of it at once, but it is it's packed. It's sort of like his life lecture about everything he's learned in treating trans patients for several years since. And
the effects of hormones and body chemistry on the body and what it does. It's amazing. But it was fascinating part of, It's the only thing he noticed. Like nothing else really had any
People
relation.
gay or bisexual or queer or whatever, except this one thing.
And then when my boy was, I want to say it was like 2 or so. Okay,
Right.
he's the youngest in the family. He has 2 older sisters, so you know he's gonna
Play with
like
the toys.
not always play with trucks and not always play with building blocks. He's gonna play with a doll. He's gonna hold that doll. He's gonna like lug it around. He
Exactly.
might even like be attached to his.
Is it me or
Whoop.
Stephanie?
I think Stephanie froze up.
The internet gremlins are back. Somebody quickly make this small blood sacrifice.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back
Am I
now.
here? Okay.
You are here.
So I was like, like that boy, he liked playing with Illy, like the other 2 girls, like kitchen supplies and like
Sure.
cooking kitchen and the dolls and the, you know, in addition to trucks, he also was attached to Ileana's like olive green skirt that she outgrew. It had like pink stitches, and he's like, "You're gonna make him gay." I'm like, "Oh, you can't
not
make
how you make
anyone gay." Can like a boy beat you up and make you gay? Like, no, that's not how it works. I'm like,
I wanted a Tonka truck so bad, so Tom got the Tonka truck. Guess who took the Tonka truck? Oh yeah, but what did I want the Tonka truck for? For the coolest, most badass bus for all of my dolls. Okay, like, I mean, as I said, I was the butch one in our family, but I was butch in like pink and purple dresses. Okay, like I was like, you know, that little girl, like her, but like in a dress with pretty frilly shoes.
you know, I've always told, like, even my husband now, I always said, you know, if any of my kids grew up and they are not the norm,
Right?
whatever, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
as long as they're happy, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, as long as they
As
find
long
someone
as they're
to love them
practicing
back.
safe cuddling. Let's go with
Right.
cuddling.
Let's say cuddling, yeah, because they're at that age, they might hear you, and yeah, let's just call it
Cuddling.
sincere cuddling.
Yes.
There. At least we're working on vocabulary. But I mean,
Right?
right,
Yeah.
you know?
Like, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm pretty sure my youngest boy is not going to end up being gay just because of how he reacts to pretty girls in pictures. and
Oh, wow.
movies.
He is
Let's just
already,
go.
the puberty is already sort of trickling in,
And-
huh?
And he's only 7. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I was the same way. I never understood why my father was worried.
Tom was never. Now, and I'm going to tell you, like, the homophobia went further because when I was like, what was I, like 4? Yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
4. Mom and Dad put me in a program at the local university where they were attending school. They were in college. For what is like the nice way to call like to de-gay people? And there was therapy, and there were like mild electrical shocks. It was allowed to do that with toddlers. This was the 80s.
It was a different time.
And then there was therapy stuff. I remember the longest time on the refrigerator, there was a set of phrases that Mom and Dad were supposed to say all of these phrases to me at least once per day, every single day. And it was like, girls are boring. Boys are fun. And what happened, the reason I got into this was because my brother, this kid, had been born. He was born when I was 3. And Mom breastfed him just like she breastfed me. And I was absolutely fascinated that, wait, we can feed a baby with our body? Like, this is a thing? And then I found out, like, boys can't do that, only girls. And I was like, what? Because before that, they had really been preaching this whole equality thing of, like, boys and girls are the same. Everything is fine. And then it was something like, oh, boys and girls are not the same. Because if boys can't feed babies with their bodies, I have to investigate this as the little 4-year-old scientist that I was. And I was absolutely fascinated by women's breasts. And that was how my parents, my father in particular, but also my mother, interpreted this as, oh God, what if she becomes a lesbian? And they sent me to this experimental program at the local university to fix any queer ways. Well, guess what? Number 1, it did not work. And number 2, I still to this day do prefer the friendship of men And I think it's probably because of the brainwashing of like, oh, I do prefer the company of men. They are more fun and more interesting, and I'm more comfortable with them. But did that affect my sexuality? Not at all. It did affect my friendship because that is, apparently more negotiable. But it did not affect my sexuality at all. Because that hadn't happened yet. At 4 years old, I did not have. I thought both men and women were pretty. All right, so maybe that sexuality was already there. I thought men and women were both quite pretty at 4. But yeah, so there was all sorts of. In fairness, our parents were much older than most everybody else's parents. Like, our father was born in 1940. And he was definitely of an older generation that had what we would definitely say is not more modern views at all. But nevertheless, this is still the same man who tried to convince me when I was 15 of maybe you should just be a lesbian at least till you graduate college. And I was like, excuse me, what? So that I wouldn't get pregnant. He said, look, pregnancy will ruin a woman's life, so maybe you should just only date girls and women until at least till you graduate college. And then if you want to date men, you can. I swear to God, he gave me this lecture, and then Mom gave me this lecture, and I was 15 for both of these. And I thought they both knew about it, and they were both doing this. I didn't find out till after Dad died that Mom had no clue that Dad had ever given me this, like, coaching about you should really look into women because you can't get pregnant that way. And Mom had already given me this lecture too on the same thing. And she's like, your father, after all that homophobia rants he gave me, because I guess she thought she was being the real rebel. Again, I can relate a lot to these whole Taiwanese storytelling now, if you think about it. Like, it's very personally relatable. So I would like to recommend that everybody study this for storytelling if they're not already familiar with it. But by the way, I do not want to forget, where is it? CB has joined us. Hello, sweetie. How is it going? Did you ever find out how the rotation was going to get planned for your help? Can't remember the words. MM says, you know what a helicopter mom is? I am that kind of mom. I love the kid. Have a really long leash and lots of freedom. So I'm more of a stealth recon mom who can become a stealth bomber mom. You know what? I think that's far more humane. The stealth part. At least gives them the illusion of independence while you make sure that nothing bad happens. Because let's be honest, some kids are just accident prone. Whether it's with their heart, their mind, or their body, they're accident prone. But yes, CB has joined us. So glad to have you, darling. And then says, that was such a thing in that generation in the South, and the stereotypes are so great. It is absolutely true. Absolutely right. Tom said I was so surprised when I grew up how much of my away from home life my mother actually knew about. I made sure it's true. I mean, I didn't realize either, but my mom was reading my diary every couple days. I never realized because she was actually really good at stalking. Can't imagine how I got so many stalkers in my late teens and early 20s. Anyway, that's what felt familiar. CB says I finished my poster, which is why I changed my avatar. Awesome! That's fantastic. I do agree. MM sounds like a good mom.
Yeah.
Mom. Right. MM says my girls and their friends think so, but I'll be honest, I'm just working my butt off to not meet my parents. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Let's see. Yes, I agree. I agree. Hooking children, toddlers up to electrodes for any reason, no matter how mild, is barbaric in the very concept of it. Yeah, I eventually met powers that be at the university because I eventually attended the same university, and and I got a degree in psychology department, by the way. And I told the chair about that, and they actually went and like found a secret door that had been like drywall covered, that had records for a lot of people who had experienced the homosexual re-education program or something. I can't remember what it was officially called. And because this chair of the department did not know about it, he went and talked to some older people who had retired, and he found out where the secret door is that had the secret files in it. And they destroyed those files so that nobody could ever be blackmailed for it, which I thought was very humane, considering you can't fix the past, but you can at least fix people's potential being open to people being negative about it. I don't know what the words are. I don't have words anymore. Learning from your parents as a child and trying not to make the same mistakes with you, their mistakes with you shows you are definitely an excellent parent. I agree. All you can do is do your best. Yes, it is called brainwashing. I could definitely relate to stories about POW's experiences. I remember when my high school best friend tried to come out to his parents literally on his deathbed from AIDS, and his father was still certain he had gotten it from drugs. Yes. The 80s were a crazy time. It is so true. You're absolutely right. Tom says humans have this amazing thing where they will not process anything that doesn't fit with their worldview and not store the memory of knowledge. It is amazing to watch. It is. Carly says I just finished my overly cheese game/novel announcement trailer. I am so giggly happy right now. Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. I can't wait to watch it. CB says, yeah, eventually my review has been planned for the 7th of December. Fantastic. I definitely think some people need to be reviewed on the rotation of how they treat CB. Yes, we cannot wait to see Charlie's trailer. I want to post it now, but it will be out Thursday. Okay, so we will mark our calendars. It's Thursday, somewhere in the time. See, MM Ward gets it. CB says I got my second magnetic board today, which is awesome.
Oh, those are fun.
Right. So, it is now 5:14 our time. What do we want to do? How are we doing, everybody?
Okay. Do we have any other movies and stuff we want to talk about?
Well, we talked a little bit about the action films, which, does have a bit of different storytelling. And we talked a bit about the more family-oriented or intergenerational family stories. And we never were able to get our own copy of A Letter to Momo to watch. So I still haven't watched this movie.
Although, now having watched, several other Taiwanese stories, I'm definitely... It is now... it does feel very... Well, I now guess just think of it as a Confucius family drama story.
Right. Well, that was what I read on the Wikipedia article. That's what it described it.
I was actually thinking more of... maybe we talk about the Monkey King.
Oh, my favorite trickster character of all time. I mean, I do love Loki, and I actually enjoy some of the stories of Tokoloshi from Africa, although some of them are quite scary too. But my favorite trickster god of all time is the Monkey King, Wukong Sun. And what do you want to talk about the Monkey King?
Well, first, why don't you just mention why you like the Monkey King? What is it about them that makes them a bit different among the trickster gods?
So, with most trickster gods, there's often in the stories an element of cruelty. Not necessarily that the characters who are treated cruelly don't necessarily have it coming. They don't in some way deserve it. I mean, I will agree that many of them do. But nevertheless, the cruelty can be a bit off-putting. I don't necessarily even always agree with the cruelty. However, with the Monkey King, it is very, very rare for there to be any element of cruelty. There's often an element of mischievousness, but most of the time there's more joy and compassion. Like the Monkey King is happy to forgive people who are genuinely sorry for the mistakes, the errors they've made. Rather than in some of the other trickster god stories from around the world, even when the person sees the error of their ways, they still are dealt with quite cruelly. And so it's as if justice doesn't matter, which I know justice is a bit of a construct, except in our brains where it is real. But I do, and that is what I like Wukong Sun for, is that there's more compassion in the Monkey King stories than in many of the other trickster god stories. As well as just the joyfulness, the silliness.
I mean, it's always going to be a fun show in just about any story that the Monkey King shows up in.
Tom gave me this. This is the human incarnation of Wukong Sun. If you can't see, the cape actually glitters. Somebody made this at one of the local Chinese restaurants. And when he went to go pick up our order, the woman who answered the phone was, sculpting these, and it's 10. And he got that for me because, like, Monkey King gifts are like the one thing that I'm happy to receive all gifts. Even though, like, many other gifts I have, like, I know it can be difficult to buy for. I always love Monkey King stuff. So.
But yeah, and also just the pantheon in mythology in East Asia is just very different. Their concept of, you know, how gods behave and act is nothing like Western or even Indian, very, very strongly.
That is true. And the Monkey King is actually, like, believed to be originally from the Indian pantheon of the monkey, you know, god, the god of wind there, and that it was brought to China through Buddhist monks' storytelling, and then went back. Hence the whole journey to the west, or journey west story from, I believe, the 1600s.
Yeah, something like that.
MM says, how do you feel about the Joy Luck Club and the attempt to present Chinese family culture to Americans? What I actually think, personally, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I think that Chinese families in particular, and, you know, there's a lot more cultures in Asia than just China, but Chinese families are as diverse as the number of families that exist. So it's a good start, is what I actually think about the Joy Luck Club book. And even the movie portrayal to a certain degree, it's one storytelling about one family, or one version.
I've always been surprised at how much this one movie gets held up for
impossible standards.
Yeah, as like this, you know, this entirely summarizes this whole group of people, versus it's a good movie in this sort of small niche genre, but you know, that Ong Lee also has movies in. Alice Wu wrote another one for Saving Face, is also another one. And actually even Dim Sum Funeral, if it ever shows up anywhere for people can watch.
Right.
Also shows another side of this story.
Because it's all of these movies that we just mentioned are about Chinese families living in America and trying to live in American culture too, because there are parts of American culture that they do enjoy adopting or feel it's necessary to adopt. So again, how do they, negotiate that modern American lifestyle and belief system with Confucius family lifestyle belief system? This is where the conflict automatically is. And I think, like, it's fun. And I mean, I'll admit, the first time I watched it, I was a teenager, and it was a 4 hanky movie. And I only cried once reading Little Women. But 4 hankies. I mean, because I could absolutely relate to the emotionally withholding mother and the daughter who just wants a little validate. Oh, yes. It rang several bells for me. And you know what? Honestly, seeing that portrayed, because I really hadn't seen that portrayed in any movies up to that point for me personally, it helped make me feel like, okay, it's not just me who feels this way. Other people do too. This has enough validity that a writer wrote about it, and then enough people made a movie together and they also portrayed this. So maybe it's not just me who has a mother who doesn't want to get close.
It does, though, also bring up something else we noticed, especially in these stories, that, you know, it's fascinating to us because we don't actually see this in many of the other East Asian cultures.
Sure.
In the movies, but there is such a striking similarity in the Chinese mothers and the stereotypes they have for how Chinese mothers act, and Jewish mothers.
Oh my goodness, it is so interesting.
They're two very different cultures, and yet we have just such a strong Venn diagram similarity with this one mother set. I mean, to me, the only real difference between the Taiwanese and Chinese version of these stories and the Jewish version of these stories is there would be more punchline jokes in the Jewish version. Other than that, Now, it's pretty much exactly how I expect each to play out.
Mm-hmm.
Of the how do you respect and not leave behind your family with their old traditions as you, the young one, pick up these new traditions that are so different and incongruous with your family's views and beliefs.
Exactly. I mean, I really, like, since our mother was Jewish, like, I could absolutely relate to. There are other mothers like this, because where we are in the Deep South, there are no other mothers like our mother. She was second generation immigrant family from Eastern Europe, and nobody around here is like that. And so to finally see any kind of mother similar to behaving the way our mother did in family situations was revelatory for me, because I definitely did not feel so alone. And that's again why I want to encourage writers not feel so alone. And that's again why I want to encourage writers and storytellers to really kind of expand out their encyclopedic knowledge of how to tell a variety of kinds of stories, so that they can find out what are those narratives that they can get a hook on of how to relay this to their readers, their listeners, their viewers, whatever, so that there will be more people coming up who are like, oh, finally, I found somebody who's portraying the kind of family, the kind of experiences that I've had, because many children feel so alone. And that is a terrible feeling to feel, especially when you're a young person and you don't have enough experience to know, no matter how you feel, there's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who feel similar. When you're a kid, when you're even a teenager, you just don't know that, because you haven't had enough experience necessarily. And so it's so lovely when you stumble across a story that you can absolutely relate to. Before I go further, I just want to point out that, nope, not this one. Eva's here. Hey, darling. Made it. It's so nice to see you. I did not want to forget. Let's see, where are we? MM says, I want a movie about the Spider Women. Oh, again, more pronouncing. Jerome? No, I'm not. Nope, I do not know about. Is this? I'm assuming this is Scandinavian.